As we continue to discuss geometric transformations, things that we want to keep in mind are our pre-image and then our image, and of course the rigid transformations, which included our translation, a reflection, and a rotation. So as we start working with compositions, compositions are going to be a combination of two or more transformations performed in a sequence. So we want to be able to determine the rule that describes a given composition of transformations and determine the image of a figure after a given composition of transformations. So a composition consists of, so as we think about our rigid transformations, our indications here, so the capital letter R is going to stand for the rotation, and then the 0 and 90 stands for the point of rotation is going to be center rotation is going to be my origin, and then we're going to rotate 90 degrees. Here we have a reflection, and that is reflecting over, in this case it's lowercase l, so that's going to be my reflection, and that might be something along the lines of, if I have a triangle, that's A, B, C, and then maybe I have a line L, then it's going to reflect over line L, and that's what that would look like. And then a translation, so this is my translation, and what that is telling me is this is going to be my X and Y, and it is reading here that 0 means I'm going to go left or right 0. However, the -2 means that I'm going to be moving downward 2 units on my y-axis. So, and we'll get some examples here, but it's just a reminder what the labeling looks like, the identifiers look like for the different rigid transformations, because we're going to work with them in combination now. For example, a combination of a rotation about G prime 90 degrees, and that would be after it was reflected over line M. So we're reading here that this would be my first transformation, and then this would be my second transformation. That's why the identifier here is G prime, not G, because when we move an object here, let's say this is a quick example. So I have this, and I'm going to take this object, and we'll say that this is line G, or point G, sorry. When I go to reflect it over line M, I end up over here, and then this is G prime. Now G prime is going to be the place where I begin my rotation. So G prime is going to be the center of rotation, and it's going to rotate 90 degrees that way. So that's why G prime is going to be the second transformation. But grouping these things together and doing them a combination. Okay, so remembering our rules, we have our reflections, and when we're reflecting across the x-axis, when we have our xy coordinate, it maps to x negative y. Again, so as we go over our x-axis, if we start here and then we map it over here, the only thing that is going to change is going to be the sign of my gosh, I'm talking about the y-axis there. So if I map over the y-axis, the only thing that's going to change is the sign of my x value, because I went from a positive to a negative. If I'm mapping over the x-axis, the only thing that's going to change is the sign of my y value, because I went from a positive y to a negative y. When I go over this imaginary line right here, I'm going to change from, much like we did for inverse functions, my x and y are going to change coordinates. It went from xy to the yx, so those will be your number switches. And then when I have the negative, negative x, then we're going to just change the sign and the letter. So my x will become not y, but negative y. My y will become not x, but negative x. So that's just remembering our reflections and translations. Translations are where we have our AB is going to be how we are translating a value is our x value. So how my x value is going to change. The b value is how is my y value going to change. Be it, so my, how does the object or the item, the rigid, transform upward, down, up, down, left, or right. And then my rotations, of course, which we just covered, we have a mapping as we map the rotation of, this is the rotation about the origin, 0, and it's going to be 90 degrees. Rotation about the origin of 180, rotation about the origin of 270, and of course my x, y become what would have been the values of negative y and x, and then looking at where we're at on the coordinate plane. So if I start here and I rotate 90 degrees, that is going to put me here. Rotating 180 degrees, it's going to put me here. Then rotating 270 degrees is going to put me here. And conversely, if I rotate a negative 90, right? If I rotate a negative 180, and I rotate a negative 270, those are the locations that it's going to put me. And of course, this will put me back at negative 360 or a positive 360 degrees. So just how the rotations work. So looking at a combination or composition. So a composition, we're composing transformations. We apply a combination of rigid transformations in a specific sequence, and these transformations are a combination of that rotation, reflection, and translations done in a specific order that will preserve the length and angle measures. Okay, so the rightmost transformation is going to be used first, but if we look here, the figure GHIJ was transformed using the composition R x-axis T 2, 2. If point G on the pre-image lies at 3, 4, what are the coordinates of G double prime on the final image? So just looking at this is going to be rotating over the x-axis and then translating x values by a positive 2 and my y values by a positive 2. So if I look at my translations, that's fairly simple. My transformation here is going to be positive 2 both for my x and my y values. So if I start with that, if I'm starting off at G is going to start off at 3, 4, and it's going to map, as I'm translating, right, 2, 2, it is going to map, G prime is going to be 3 plus 2, and then 4 plus 2, which is going to be G prime is now going to be at 5, 6. Now, so we've made it to 5, 6, and now we want to map using the rotating over the x-axis. And when we looked at that, rotating over the x-axis was going to be, just thinking about it, the x-axis, if I go from here down to here, the only thing changing is my y value is positive here. Here my y value is going to be negative. So then it would be my x value didn't change, right? X value stayed the same. So my x value is going to be 5, and then my y value is going to be negative 6. So G double prime is going to be 5, negative 6 is going to be its location of the final image. Again, just sort of looking at these transformations and making sure that we do them in order. Far right transformation gets done first. Okay, continuing on with another example here. It says, what is the final image after composition R, y-axis, and T3, 1/2, and -1 is applied to ABCD? So we're looking at a rotation over the y-axis after we translate it 3 up and 1 left based on the numbers. So doing my first translation, I'm going to take and I'm going to go up 3 and left, and down 1. So D is going to be 1, 2, 3 here, right there, and down 1. So that is going to be D prime. And so if I do that translation, so it looks like 1, 2, 3, we're looking for A prime. And then, of course, it's going to be 1, 2 to get to B prime, C prime, oops, sorry, I'm just going straight across. That's wrong, because I forgot to go down, right? So I go across 1, 2, 3, and then down 1. That is A prime. And then if I just go over 2 from there, that'll be B prime. And then down here I have C prime. So here is my first translation of my combination. Now what I want to do is I want to rotate over the y-axis. And when I do that, looks like rotating over the y-axis would be flipping it this way. So it turns out that this would turn out like this. However, this is going to be A double prime, this is going to be B double prime, this is going to be C double prime, and this is going to be D double prime. So that should be my new object right there. The locations of my new A double prime, B double prime, C double prime, D double prime. So there is that original, that is transformation. Just making sure things to take away here is that we're always starting from the right on our compositions. Looking at this image independent of the previous example, what we have here is a composition. And so if you just look at some of the identifying features, we have just G here. Probably shouldn't do it in that color. And then we have G prime, and then we have G double prime. So what we're looking at is here is our original pre-image, and then the first transformation was going to be to reflect over line K right here. So we had reflect over line K. That was our first thing. And then we have the next transformation would have been to just, it looks like the only thing that's happening here is this, everything was shifted downward. So we just had a translation downward. Doesn't look like our Y changed any, so it may be something along the lines of maybe X moved down 4 and Y did not change at all. So that could be a possible mapping here in this example. There's no way to tell this quantity right here just because there's no scale in which to do it. So as we do one last example here, it says the rule T5 negative 0.5, and which is my translation 5 up and 0.5 down, and a rotation about the origin, rotation 0, 180, so we're going to go about the origin 180 degrees of xy, is applied to triangle ABC to produce A prime, B prime, C prime. So the first thing we did was we went ahead and have accomplished the first rotation in this image. So we have rotated 180 degrees, and that is my new image. And then we're going to go now, and it says, what are the coordinates of the vertex A prime, A double prime, of a triangle A double prime, B double prime, C double prime? Well, what's happening here is we're going to have to do this second transformation because that is still pending. So it means that we're going to go up 5 on our x values, and we're going to go negative 0.5 on all our y values. So if I just take C here, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to go negative. I completely did that wrong. I'm not going up, I'm going right, because that's my x value. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So C double prime is going to go right 5 and then down 0.5, so that ends up right here. And then my A is going to go over 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down a half. And then my B is going to go over 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down a half. So here is going to be B double prime, C double prime, and then connecting those two, and here is my second transformation of that composition. So again, it's just a matter of making sure that you do it in order. This is your first movement. This is your second movement. Very important that you get it in order, or the object, your image, will not be accurate. So we'll do more examples in class, but again, we're talking about geometric transformations, and we're talking about the rigid transformations, compositions of our rigid transformations, and those rigid transformations were rotation, reflection, and translation. So we will continue with this in class.